read 20 books in July, and here are my thoughts on all of them. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We are finally back on the camera that I was using originally in my previous videos. I'm so glad to be back on here. Today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in July, and I can't wait to discuss them all with you, so let's jump right in. This month I read 7,675 pages and listened to 170 hours. This might have been my most audio heavy month yet. 75% of the books that I read this month were on audio, and then another 25% on print. I didn't read a single ebook this month, which is so crazy. 40% of the books that I read were on Libby, 25% were print copies, 10% were audiobooks on Libro FM and Hoopla, and then 5% were audiobooks spread equally across Spotify, NetGalley, and Google Play. Okay, my first read of the month was an absolute banger. 5-star reads. In fact, if I could give this a million stars, I probably would. We have Nightshade by Autumn Woods. First of all, let's take a moment for this cover. Isn't the art so cute? Plus we have these sprayed edges with more character art. I'm obsessed. Anyways, let's go back to what this book is about and why I enjoyed it so much. So Nightshade is kind of like an academic romance. It's set at this university in the Scottish Highlands, and it follows our main character, Ophelia. She's an orphan. Her parents were killed in a helicopter crash a few years ago. And this crash happened very close to the castle grounds, and the helicopter that her parents were riding in belonged to this huge conglomerate that produces all types of air vehicles. I feel like there's a better word to describe that, but like planes, helicopters, private jets, etc. And the son of the CEO of this conglomerate is Alex Corbeau Green, who attends the university and is our other main character. So Ophelia really uses this admission to this university as the opportunity to spy on Alex, figure out how her parents died because she doesn't believe that it was an accident. Alex, on the other hand, is infatuated with Ophelia the moment that they meet and genuinely cannot get enough of her, and the two of them kind of collide and become involved in this very sweet and tender romance. Oh, also in the midst of all of this, Ophelia is getting stalked by some random person, and so there's a little bit of history there to figure out who it is and how it's connected to her parents' murder, and Alex kind of steps in to help figure out who the stalker is, and so they kind of work together there. And there's a lot of who did this to you type of moments as Ophelia gets stalked by this person. I shouldn't be laughing that she's getting stalked, but of course, like romance wise, you can understand why I was so giddy. But that's kind of the purpose of this book, and I think the reason why I loved it so much is genuinely because the romance, like I mentioned, is just the most pure, kind, warm-hearted romance you'll ever read, especially surrounding two people who are struggling so much with their mental health, with depression, with all these like familial obligations, feeling super lonely even if they have people around them. Alex and Ophelia really see comfort from each other, and just like reading their scenes squeezes your heart so much, like I can't even explain it. And even aside from that, one of the things that I mentioned in my review on Goodreads is that this is kind of like a dark academia book, and I've always struggled with dark academia books because I just find them so gloomy and depressing, and sometimes they're like really vague and mysterious because they're trying to set this like allure of this broader mystery or like fantasy element that's going on, and it just makes me more confused as a reader. And I often find them also just like very pretentious. Typically in dark academias, they're set in like private boarding schools, right? And so the people who go there are obviously very rich, and that kind of comes with other types of character dynamics and character personalities that I just despise reading. But in this book, Ophelia really comes from a low-income background because she doesn't have her parents around. She's really just supporting herself. It feels a lot more individualistic and not like these students are super ignorant of the amount of wealth that they have. So I really liked it for that reason as well. I actually also listened to this on audiobook. I didn't read this print copy, and the audiobook was also done so well. It's the same male narrator as the narrator for Deep End. Alex is like French and British, or like French and German, I'm forgetting exactly. So the narrator does this like really unique accent for him. Anyways, I love this book so much. I highly recommend it. It is like 100% one of the top romances that I've read this year, and I truly cannot wait for the second book because it does leave on a very big cliffhanger, and I have no idea where we're gonna go go from here. All I know is that I need it now. The next book that I picked up was also a lilac book, and it was The Great Misfortune of Stella Sedgwick. This is a YA Black historical romance. It features a very diverse friend group. It has like Bridgerton vibes. The romance in particular is estranged childhood friends to lovers, and our love interest is kind of this like playboy rake type, which is always so fun to read about in historical romances. And our FMC, Stella Sedgwick, was very fun to follow. I listened to the audiobook for this as well, and I just loved being in her mind and hearing all of her monologues about the expectations for women in society when it comes to marriage and love and careers and things like that. I feel like non-historical romance readers never realize how much politics goes into a historical romance, and that was very apparent here as well. The audiobook was also a lot of fun because the narrator does a lot of very fun European accents, so like not just a British accent but also like French, Italian, and other ones as well. So I really enjoyed the audiobook for that reason. The next audiobook I listened to was Home Has No Borders, which is an anthology of contemporary and coming-of-age stories written by some of the most popular South Asian writers out there. So this is kind of like a companion anthology to Magic Has No Borders, which was essentially the same thing but in like a fantasy format. So you had a bunch of fantasy stories from a bunch of famous fantasy South Asian writers. And I really liked Magic Has No Borders. There are a lot of fun stories in that one, but I didn't enjoy Home Has No Borders that much. A lot of these authors write coming-of-age stories, but there are also a lot of like romance authors, and the stories that they write are pretty straightforward when it comes to a typical like teen YA story. But a lot of these short stories were like written as vague metaphors for some like obscure theme, and I just like wasn't really vibing with that type of storytelling. I really thought they were going to be more straightforward like teen high school rom-coms, coming-of-age books, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, it just like wasn't giving that vibe at all. There were a few stories in there that I really liked. I really liked Nisha Sharma's short story, which was a romance because she's, you know, a romance writer. We also had one by Navdeep Singh Dhillon, who writes about this sibling dynamic between a Punjabi brother and sister, kind of set in like Central California and kind of talking about the Punjabi community there. So I really like that one as well. But yeah, I feel like the other ones were not that memorable for me. Next, I read an arc of Deep Pockets by Nana Malone. First of all, this is a very cool print arc. This cover already is so slutty. And then it also came with like sprayed edges and everything, which was so insane. Anyway, very fortunate to have received this. I've loved Nana Malone's work for so long. I will say though, I don't know like what version of the story was printed in this arc, but it came with so many grammatical errors, typos, and other printing mistakes, and it just like really took me out of the book when I was reading it. Obviously, this was just, you know, an advanced reader copy, so there's bound to be errors. I don't really know how much of this was fixed for the print version. I would assume all of it, but it was just really hard to get through this book. And I feel like in general, I think Nana Malone's trad pubbed book, Gold Coast Dilemma, that I read earlier this year was much better edited than this one, which is indie. This is the start of a new duet that takes place in the same universe as her Kings of the Boardroom trilogy. I think that's what the series is called. But the books are Takeover, Acquisition, and Merger. Our main characters in that series are Gwen and Atticus, and Gwen has a best friend named Lance who is in love with her. And throughout the series, we're dealing with this whole kind of like love triangle between Lance, Gwen, and Atticus. Atticus, of course, is like super jealous over Gwen and Lance's relationship. In this series, we have Lance as our main love interest and Gwen's younger sister Morgan. And it's supposed to be this kind of like age gap, sisters, best friend's younger sister type of romance. But it was just like really hard to kind of wrap my head around their relationship when we spent 3 books before this seeing how Lance was in love with Gwen. And now all of a sudden I'm expected to believe that he's obsessed with and in love with her younger sister as well. And like there's barely any mention of his feelings for Gwen in this book, and I don't even know if much time has passed between the 2 series, but I would assume there would be some like carryover from the first series where he's kind of like coming to terms with the fact that he doesn't have Gwen anymore and now he is with her younger sister. I don't know. It was very weird. I feel like if we saw that transition from one sister to the other, I would have believed this romance more, but yeah, I don't think this is one of my favorites from Nana Malone. The next audiobook that I listened to was The Education of Kia Greer. This was such an interesting book. It follows a teen reality TV star whose family has this reality TV that follows them them and their lives, kind of like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Kia, our main character, is not really that interested in continuing the show and being in the spotlight. Her entire family is in the entertainment industry. Her mom is like their momager. Their dad is like a very high profile actor, and all of her sisters are either like models, singers, actresses, something of the sort, and she's not particularly interested in doing any of that. One day at her younger sister's birthday party, she meets this very famous male pop star, and they really just like hit it off from the moment they meet at this party. While all of this is happening, her older sister is going through this nasty breakup and has been getting a lot of like terrible comments in like gossip posts, magazines, social media, etc. So in order to take the public eye off of her sister, Kia asks this pop star that she meets at her younger sister's birthday party if they want to enter this like fake PR relationship and just like bring some of the media attention to them instead of her older sister. And this pop star agrees, so they start fake dating, even though there are definitely vibes between them. And while they're in this fake PR relationship, you really see a lot of the pressure from the entertainment industry, social media, Kia's mom kind of like impact them to change their personality, change their behavior, their physical appearance, and you really start to see it take a toll on Kia, especially as like a young teen. So yeah, very interesting to read about. The author, I believe, also like works in the entertainment industry. I saw that they're a writer on XO Kitty, the Netflix show, and they also write for entertainment journalism, so they definitely know what they're talking about. It's very apparent when you read this book that they know a lot about the music industry, about Hollywood, fashion, etc. And funny enough, speaking of XO Kitty, Reagan Aaliyah, who is one of the main actresses in XO Kitty, narrates the audiobooks, so that was also really cool to listen to as well. The next audiobook that I listened to was Mind to Possess by Melanie Singh. This is the next book that I've been reading in the Side Changeling series. I've been trying to read these books spread apart so that they don't all like blend into one another. This one was good. It's the first book in the main series that's a second chance romance. In a way, I guess. I don't know. It follows two estranged childhood friends. They definitely have like a history that they reflect on throughout the book. One is a leopard shifter and one is a human. So I think this might also be the first main book in this series that features a human FMC, which is super interesting to read about. But yeah, solid read from Melanie. The next book that I read was Soul Gazer. I was really excited for this. I heard about all of the comps for this book, including Pirates of the Caribbean, Sinbad, The Mummy, but this book disappointed me so much. The magic system, the lore was so hard to follow along, and the romance was also not that compelling. I described this to my friends as a pirate situationship, and let me explain. So the main romance trope in this book is a marriage of convenience. We follow this girl who gets married to this famous pirate because she wants to escape her family, and the only way she can do that is to attach herself to a man to be her husband. But this pirate that she gets married to is notorious for sleeping around with women and kind of just like moving on from them the next day. He has this reputation. Everybody in this kingdom knows about him. And towards the end of the book, you can tell that the MMC is itching to do the same to our main character. There's even a moment at the end of the book where she like asks him to stay and he hesitates, and it's so cringy to read. I cannot describe it. I just felt so embarrassed for her. And this is a fantasy book. I don't want to be reading about the horrors of modern dating in my pirate fantasy book. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy this. I feel like there's going to be a sequel because it kind of leaves off on a cliffhanger, but if there is, I probably will not be picking it up. It's such a shame because this cover is so gorgeous. The next book that I read was Our Vicious Oats by Annie Davenport. This was one of my most anticipated reads of 2025. I love Annie Davenport's works. Her debut duology, The Blood Trials and The Blood Gift, is one of my favorite fantasy duologies. So I was very excited to read this, especially when I heard that it's a romantasy centering Black Fae. And a lot of the teasers that she was posting included so many high heat romance moments, so I was very excited to get into this. It follows our two main characters, Kadisha and Malachi, and the kingdoms that they come from. So the conflict is pretty central to just them and their kingdoms. It doesn't really expand to beyond that. Overall, I do think this is more romance heavy than The Blood Trials and Blood Gift, which focus more on the politics, but I will say that the middle chunk of this book, like the middle 50 to 60%, was actually really slow. I do think that this book suffers from a lot of pacing and editing issues. I don't really know if it's because this book is a standalone, whereas The Blood Trials and The Blood Gift was a duology, so you kind of had more to work with. Not much happens. I feel like the plot was just stretched out so much, and this book is thick. It's like almost 500 pages. It's almost as if Annie Davenport came into the story with this concept of, okay, I want like an enemies to lovers romance with 2 black fae. How do I make a plot out of this character dynamic and this trope? I will say the first 20% and the last 20% were both super engaging. So again, I think there was just a lot lacking from like the middle chunk of the book that made me lose interest over the plot and what was happening, because there was nothing happening. I will definitely keep reading Annie Davenport's works though. I know she has the ability to write a compelling story, and again, I don't know if it's because this book was a standalone or if it was because she was really just focused on the tropes and the character dynamics, or what it was, but yeah, this one was not an absolute hit for me. Another audiobook that I listened to this month was August Lane by Regina Black. This was also an anticipated read for me in 2025, and it did not disappoint. I would highly recommend the audiobook for this because it kind of reads as both a memoir and a romance in one. You have a full cast of narrators who portray various characters in this book, so it feels like you're getting like multiple stories in one. Our main romance follows August Lane and Luke Randall, and the two of them were friends, and friends turned into something more in high school. August is a very talented songwriter and also the daughter of a very famous country musician, JoJo Lane. And JoJo has been struggling a lot in the industry against people who don't believe that black country artists are a thing and can contribute to the country music industry. And August just like really doesn't like being associated with her mom. She gets, you know, teased because of it in school, but she really does have this like uncanny ability to write really powerful and meaningful songs, until one day Luke steals the song lyrics that she wrote and acts as if he's the one who came up with them, and then his career as a country musician skyrockets from there. We fast forward to when they're in their like 30s, I want to say, and Luke is now kind of at the rock bottom of his career. His one song that he stole from August is his one-hit wonder, and his career hasn't really gone beyond that until one day he is invited back by JoJo Lane's team to come perform for this concert that they're doing to honor JoJo because she's getting inducted to the Country Music Hall of Fame. And that means he has to go back to the town that he grew up in, where August is, and confront her after he stole her song and, you know, left her in the dust. It does have that second chance romance aspect, as I mentioned, but then you also just have so much of JoJo's career acting as the backdrop throughout this story. Each chapter features a little snippet that she does with this interviewer for like a podcast talking about her career and her life. And you kind of see the impact that it had on both August and Luke. So yeah, super interesting. I feel like if you are someone who has really enjoyed Cowboy Carter and a lot of the discussions that have been happening this year because of Beyonce about black voices in country music, I think you'll really like this. The next romance I picked up this month was A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. This is her newest cozy romantic fantasy. As you can guess from the title, this one follows a magical inn in the UK. There's a lot of found family in this, just like the secret society of irregular witches. And again, I think the found family was probably my favorite part. I think overall I liked the first book better, but the story was still very endearing, and I really think that Sangu is excellent at writing these cozy magical fantasies with like a dash of romance. I really love the quirky British humor that she puts into all of them as well. So if you're someone who really enjoyed, I definitely still recommend picking this up, and I cannot wait to see what she writes next. And then speaking of witches, I also picked up Love Spells Trouble by Nia Davenport, which is Annie Davenport's YA pen name, so the same author as Our Vicious Oats. This is a YA contemporary witch fantasy. I listened to the audiobook of this, and I think the narrator did a good job of portraying, you know, this like high school teen contemporary romance. It has fake dating. The romance is very cute. It does move very quickly though. It has a little bit of like insta love, kind of that magical moment that happens in a lot of teen rom-coms when the main character like lays eyes on the love interest for the first time, and you have that slow-mo camera shot of them walking. That's the vibes of the romance that this book gave me. And I think a lot of teen romances are like that. They kind of fall into that type of bucket where you have this like instant attraction to someone, and it's this like very innocent love that you experience before you really understand what it means to being in a relationship and all of that. But yeah, very cool book for teens who are interested in reading about witches in a contemporary setting. It kind of has a little bit of like the secret high society vibes in the South as well, if that's something that you're interested in. I had a good time. The next audiobook I listened to was A Dance of Lies. This is a romantasy following a disabled court dancer who is framed for murdering this important nobleman by the king. And she ends up being this pawn in this evil king's games, and it's like very complex, very intriguing politics. books. The premise obviously like sounded super interesting to me, and I saw a lot of my mutuals raving about this book, so that's why I decided to pick it up. And of course, the disability rep in fantasy is something that I'm always looking for, especially because she's a dancer. So I was very excited to read it. However, I will say this book is filled with a lot of purple prose, a lot of flowery language, a lot of fluff added into the sentences and the characters in her monologue, and it felt so unnecessary and took me out of the story multiple times that I had a hard time kind of keeping up with the plot. So yeah, it was an interesting book. The romance is also like just okay. I don't think it was super compelling as other fantasies with romance subplots that I've read. I don't know if I'll be picking up the sequel, but I think if you're someone who really looks for romanticies that are set in kind of like a Regency setting, betrayal and backstabbing and other types of political intrigue, I think you'll enjoy this. The next audiobook I picked up was super short, Can't Help Faking in Love by Swati Hegde. You can tell how short this book is. It's a very quick, fun, sweet romance. It's a fake dating romance set in Bangalore with a little bit of a Bollywood twist in it. I really like the fact that the narrator for this audiobook actually did Indian accents for the characters, especially considering the book is set in Bangalore. A lot of South Asian romances are only set in the States and only feature South Asian Americans, so I really appreciate that there are romances out there that are set in India and actually feature Indian characters. Swati herself lives in India, so I feel like it's always extra special reading these books from her. Another dark academia book that I read this month was Immortal Consequences by Ivy Marie. Just as I mentioned when I was talking about Nightshade, this is a book that is set in an elite boarding school, but this one is set in the afterlife. So kind of that period between when people die and when they cross over to the other side. We follow 6 students who are competing to become something called the Ascended. And Ascended is someone who's able to join the school's magical elite and not someone who ends up dying permanently and crosses over to the other side. And these 6 students are very competitive. They all really want to win for their own reasons. And among this group of 6 characters, you have them like paired off into little couples. So you have one pair that are best friends. The other pair are secretly in love with each other but are scared to admit their feelings to one another. And the last pair are academic rivals, and they also have this very push and pull type of dynamic, and they're also scared of admitting their feelings for each other. I always really like following books that have this like big cast of characters like this. At first you kind of have to like settle into each character and understand, you know, their backstory, their personalities, their motivations. But once you kind of get the hang of that, it becomes really enjoyable to see how the story plays out. There's a lot of plot twists and betrayals and backstabbing again, but I think that's what makes these types of books so fun. And this book does end up on a bit of a cliffhanger. Very excited to read the sequel to see how we pick things up. I feel like just like the first book, it'll be super angsty with some of the betrayals that have kind of come up in this book, but I cannot wait to read it. The next audiobook that I listened to, I kind of picked up on a whim because I saw a lot of people were loving it, and I have been meaning to get into this author's works, but I just like didn't really know where to start. And it was Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a romantasy in kind of like a contemporary setting that follows Lilith, you know, the main figure from Catholicism, but through the lens of a feminist retelling. This book kind of gave me the same vibes as a lot of like noir fantasy books, like the Guild Hunter series or the Dark Olympus series by Katie Robert. I really like the vibes of this book. It's very gritty, very cutthroat. There's a lot of painful, heart-wrenching moments in this book and a lot of like feminine rage moments. And of course, the romance between our main character and the love interest, who kind of start off as like frenemies, was sold with so much chemistry, so much tension and high heat. I really love that as well. Like I mentioned, this is my first Scarlett St. Clair book. Definitely not my last. I cannot wait to pick up the next book that comes after this. And I feel like I need to check out her other books as well because I had a lot of fun with this one. I feel like it's one of those books that you kind of just like pick up on a whim but then end up loving. I'm really happy that I decided to pick this up. The next book that I picked up was A Witch's Guide to Love and Poison by Amna Qureshi. This is an art copy. I'm showing the back of the book because it actually features the title. The front of the book just has this cool design that kind of mimics how a lot of UK arcs are. This is Amna's YA romantic fantasy, and I like this a lot better than her adult one, The Baby Dragon Cafe. I felt like this was much better edited. It follows a garden witch who lives in the enchanted forest with a bunch of little girls that she has to take care of. They're her sisters, and every year when one of the sisters turns 18, they become the new like head of the family, and then the sister who was the previous head of the family like moves away from the enchanted forest, and the cycle kind of repeats. So now our main character Visma is the new head of the family. She has to take care of all of her sisters. They don't have any parents. They're all orphans from some type of situation. So they're not all like blood related. So it has this like found family aspect that I really enjoyed. And Bisma is a garden witch, like I mentioned, and she's really good at creating these poisons to help people get out of like dangerous situations, for example. And often she has to go into the main village to get ingredients for her potions, and that's where she visits this apothecary that is run by this family, and the son of this family is this boy that she finds so infuriating. His name is Xander, and he's very clearly obsessed with her. In the main conflict of this book, we have her sisters who start mysteriously getting poisoned by someone, they don't know who, and the poison starts like killing them very rapidly. So Xander and Bisma have to work together to save her sisters and find out who is attacking her and her sisters. It's very cute, wholesome, tender, romantic fantasy. Highly recommended. The audiobook was available on Spotify Premium, even though this is a UK book. So if you're a Spotify Premium member, you should definitely pick this up. Another audiobook I listened to this month was Love is a War Song by Danica Neva. First of all, this cover is so cute. I'm obsessed. This book follows a Native American pop star who isn't very connected with her heritage and her roots. She features a bunch of Native American imagery and symbolism in her latest music video, but it's used in kind of an offensive and stereotypical way. So she gets a lot of backlash online and ends up being canceled for it, even though a lot of the public doesn't even know that she herself is Native American. But that's not really the point, you know, she still did something that was offensive to her community, even if it wasn't her intention. In order to save face, her momager sends her to the ranch that her mom grew up in Oklahoma that is now run by her grandmother. And her grandmother and her mom are kind of estranged. Her mom doesn't really talk to her family or her community back in Oklahoma, which is why Avery never really grew up knowing about her community like that. It's very much like a fish out of water trope. She has to learn how to operate this ranch, learn to be connected with her Native American community, become close to her grandmother who she's never spoken to. Danica talked about how one of the inspirations for this book was the Hannah Montana movie, and I highly agree. The parallels are like too similar to miss. While she's at this ranch, she also meets the ranch hand, who is a cowboy that works with and helps out her grandmother, and the two of them start catching feelings. And I actually really like the romance of this one. I really like the romance in Danica's first book as well. Both of these romances are so cute, and I just like really love how their relationship and chemistry builds as they spend more and more time with each other. Yeah, I had a really fun time with this one. I love following Avery. I love the relationship she had with Luke. The romance was great. Highly recommend this if you're looking for more cowboy romances, especially books with more Native American representation. Okay, we're getting down to the final two books here. The next one that I have is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas. I loved this book so much. It is so unique. It's a horror book, but also a book with a romance subplot. It also has a lot of like feminist themes kind of interwoven into the horror themes of this book. Just such an interesting, cool book. I loved it so much. I love Isabel Cañas' writing so much. Her storytelling is so captivating, and I just like found myself getting more and more interested in this book as I was flipping the pages, especially when she's writing the horror scenes. The writing is so visceral that you can clearly picture this as a horror movie right in front of your eyes. And I'm someone who loves horror movies. I grew up watching them, and I feel like this book in particular reminded me of a lot of the classic horror films like The Exorcist, like The Conjuring, like Paranormal Activity. Obviously, from the title, you can guess that this book is about demonic possession, and a lot of the elements in this book reminded me so much of the films about demonic possession that I love. That sounded so weird coming out of my mouth. And then just like speaking to the romance a bit, the romance in her books always has me grinning. Her men are such yearners, and I just loved reading Elias's POV in this book when he's just thinking about Alba, even though she's literally possessed by a demon, like he's still yearning for her. It was so crazy. Anyways, top read for me this year for sure. I cannot wait to read more of her works, and I highly recommend this book and also Vampires of El Norte if you are looking for something that has elements of horror and the paranormal and romance. The last book I listened to this month was Lore of the Tides. I actually wasn't a huge fan of Lore of the Wilds when I read it. I want to say like 2 years ago at this point. So I wasn't really planning to read Lore of the Tides, but I got sent a copy. So I thought I'd give it a shot. I do think I like this better than Lore of the Wilds, but it still wasn't a huge hit for me. I think in this book, my favorite aspect was the romance. I won't spoil who the romance was between because it does feature a love triangle in book one. The magic system and the world is definitely expanded upon a lot in this book. It's not really just focused on the world of the Fae fae that we see in Lore of the Wilds. Now we go underwater, as you can see in this cover. At the same time, even though it was really cool seeing this world expanded upon, I feel like it was hard keeping track of all of the politics and all of the creatures and, you know, like how their magic works and how it's connected to the world of the fae and to lore and everything. So I think because of that, it wasn't a very memorable fantasy duology for me, but of course fantasy books with fae are always lacking representation, and I will always be grateful that this duology exists because it is a black romantasy. If you're looking for romantasies with that kind of representation, definitely recommend picking up this duology. Okay, those are all the books that I read in July. Let me know if you also read any of these and how you like them. Tell me what your favorite read of July was. I'm so excited to get to some of my other anticipated reads for the rest of the fall and the winter. I will be back here to tell you about how I felt about them, so I'll see you in the next video. Bye!